The biggest hurdle for veterans to climb, and I'm actually going to start this with something that you don't want to hear, but on this channel, I like to keep it real. You might not be able to obtain 100%. That's just that. At least not right now. Your conditions over time will most likely get worse or develop other conditions, so absolutely do not quit, but you have to stay on top of it. Now, myself and Veterans Info Tap cover the same topic, so if you want to hear from different perspectives on each of these steps, it's a 5-step process, be sure to check out that channel and that video. It'll be pinned in the comments below. Now, for those that are right at the edge and have developed secondary disabilities, or their conditions have gotten worse, or you just might be underrated, here's the guide that any VA claims coach will look at when assessing your disability to get you properly rated. The template is really a 5-step process. So starting with increases, what are you service connected for? So what are your service connected disabilities and what are your current symptoms? Once you understand that, then go look at how the VA rates those conditions, and if you know you should be rated higher prior to submitting your claim, and this part is crucial because it's missed all the time, gather the evidence. Talk to your healthcare team, your specialists, whatever that looks like for you, whether that's private or through the VA. Do not submit any claim without evidence. I cannot stress that enough. If you submit your claim without evidence, one, I'm telling you that you're stupid and you deserve it, okay? I know that's a little harsh, but I like to be upfront. And two, you're leaving the only source of current evidence to be provided by the C&P examiner. We all know C&P examiners are either really good or not so good. So regardless, do the legwork to gather the evidence, and if you don't, I don't want to see you posting on Facebook groups and YouTube comments about how the VA sucks this and how the VA sucks that. We have to start submitting all of our claims with evidence. Okay, so that's for increases. Once you look at your service-connected disabilities, I then recommend you start looking at secondary conditions. I have an entire video on secondary conditions, and I'll link that below in the pinned comments as well. It will also have a list of secondary conditions broken down by body system. This is a topic that really gets under my skin because veterans rarely submit evidence with their secondary claim. Secondary conditions, in my opinion, are the most difficult claim to prove, and that obviously depends on what secondary condition you're claiming and to what service-connected disability you're claiming it to. Regardless, gather your evidence. If you submit migraine secondary to tinnitus because YouTube told you to, which is totally okay, but you don't submit evidence with that claim, it's probably going to be denied. You need to gather the evidence, and that starts with speaking with your healthcare team about your tinnitus and your migraines. Secondary conditions are not a one-size-fits-all, especially for conditions that can't be proven by an x-ray. Gather the evidence. I cannot stress this enough. After increases in secondaries comes denials, and this one can be a bit difficult. The first step is understanding why you were denied in the first place. Every single claim needs what is known as the big three, which are the in-service event, the current diagnosis, and the nexus. You were denied for one or more of those reasons, and if you were denied, you will see a favorable findings list, assuming you have at least one of the big three. And that section will tell you if you did have complaints in your service treatment records, which is the in-service events, or you have been diagnosed, which is the current diagnosis. That's 1 and 2 of the big three. For secondaries, it'll have a statement that your primary claim disability is service-connected, which is kind of useless. So figure out why you were denied, then gather new and relevant evidence to combat the reason for denial. If you're missing the in-service event, you need to produce evidence that shows the condition came from service. Ideally, you have evidence from service, like medical evidence, and if you don't, that's where things get a bit dicey. Sure, a statement could help, but it's definitely not the end-all, be-all. If you are missing the current diagnosis, one, you have to stop submitting claims without a current diagnosis. That's the way I can put it, okay? 2, go get the diagnosis. If you have the in-service event and the current diagnosis, I'd probably recommend a higher level review and then start to consider an independent medical opinion from a medical doctor. No less, and that no less part is my personal opinion. So far we have increases, secondaries, and denials, and now we have to move on to new conditions. Is there anything from service treatment records that was overlooked and you have or could get a current diagnosis for? So if you fell in service and you hurt your knee, but you don't have a current diagnosis for your knee, that's irrelevant. You have to be diagnosed. And last but not least are presumptive conditions. Although PACT Act was passed in August of 22, tons of veterans have not submitted claims covered under the PACT Act. The most common for Gulf War has been sinusitis, rhinitis, bronchitis, asthma, and IBS. And before you ask, yes, IBS is covered under the PACT Act. For Vietnam era, you're going to see a lot of hypertension claims. These presumptive conditions are extremely easy, and all you need is to meet the time criteria and have a current diagnosis. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen veterans complain and whine on social media about being denied a PACT Act claim, and the VA sucks this, and the VA sucks that, and the veteran swears up and down they had all the evidence. Then I asked to see their decision letter, and lo and behold, what do you know? They did not have a current diagnosis, okay? In my opinion, you get the stupid whip, all right? We've got to stop submitting claims without current diagnosis, especially presumptives. But no big deal, okay? Once we see that we need a diagnosis, and you can get a diagnosis, it's a very, very simple supplemental claim, and the claim will be awarded back to the original intent to file date. And that's it. That is how you go from whatever percentage you're at to 100. Last thing I'll say is this. There is no cheating the system, okay? Claims must be proven with the big 3, no more and no less. Yes, you will need evidence. Yes, your intent to file gives you 1 year to gather that evidence. Stop complaining. Stop swimming upstream. It's difficult. Get with the process and get properly rated. Of note, the big 3 changes for secondary conditions. So we have the in-service event, the current diagnosis, and the Nexus. For secondary conditions, the in-service event becomes your primary service-connected disability. You still need a current diagnosis, and the Nexus specifically links a current diagnosis to the service-connected disability. That's what makes it secondary. And for presumptives, the in-service event becomes a time criteria. You still need a current diagnosis, and the Nexus is assumed by the VA. So it's not a medical nexus, it's a presumption, okay? It's a presumptive nexus. That's what makes presumptive conditions so easy to be awarded when you submit that VA claim.